level that's enforceable and we can all live with. So how do we want to start this conversation? Do we, our sound guy, of course, is Will. Caitlin, right? Caitlin? Carolyn?
Carolyn.
Caroline. Sorry, Caroline. You're here representing Venture Richmond for sound?
No, she's an
No, I'm
intern.
just an intern.
Okay, an intern?
I'm just here with Jack.
Oh, okay. Who's your sound guy?
Well, he's not here.
Oh, is he coming?
Don't think so.
Oh, okay. Well, then how do we want to do this then?
Well, you want sound to be the first or the primary focus?
Well,
Only.
I assumed that we were getting together to discuss sound.
Okay, we had some other
because
things
it's
too
such a technical issue that I don't,
Yeah, I was under the impression this was about sound.
yeah, so
Okay.
was I.
Well, let's deal with that. Seems to me that we've got two different approaches. One is the Venture Richmond approach is the city has a sound ordinance and we need to comply with that. Y'all's approach is to establish a new measurement of decibels in a fashion that's not in accordance with the sound ordinance and would require certain special equipment, special enforcements, entirely different system. What I think would be a more practical solution, because y'all are not comfortable with the sound ordinance, we're not comfortable with what y'all are proposing for a number of reasons. Cost, we don't think the measurement should be from the proximity of the property where y'all are, it should be from the homes and so forth. So one thing that we have put together and like to offer for consideration, I have become convinced, I've not lived with this topic as y'all have, both Venture Richmond and y'all. I think a solution, I think there is an issue, it does need to be addressed. And if you're not comfortable with the city sound ordinance and we're not comfortable with your approach, we've done some work and looked at it, and I think what can be done is to put in place a requirement on the Charter Green property as to where the sound is directed. And so I'm going to pass this out, and this came from some folks who know this subject matter much better than I think you've seen that, Jack.
Pass these around.
Yeah, actually, I'll go a little bit both ways.
Okay.
Let me keep one. The folks who do sound for concerts, of these nature festivals and so forth, basically say that the key is focusing, we can go with you, that the key is focusing the direction of the sound. Jack is of the opinion that having the stage, the outro stage at the bottom of the hill is better than having it on the side, and that was what was done this last time, I believe. But this, I'll just walk you through it, and it's both a statement, but it's also what we would put in the proffers, that the modern sound systems can be set up to focus sound within a narrow coverage range with minimum sound spillage. And that's the problem. I think we commit to setting up speaker arrays, how do you say the word?
Array.
Arrays, the levels of them, to tightly focus sound on a very narrow audience area. And they would be stacked or hung vertically to allow the sound engineer to direct the sound, especially vertically, to minimize spillage. In our case, directing the sound to the hillside greatly limits the noise impacts beyond the slope of the venue. And that proved to be more beneficial at the last festival, where the recordings levels were that were done were slightly, but only barely higher than the normal background of it. So the idea is to direct where the speakers are located and how you direct them is up the hill, and we think that would have would minimize the potential impact of the sound spillage going over to the Oregon Hill homes. It's a practical solution that we think can work. It would be enforceable, and this is on top of the requirements we discussed that we sent. Did you send on to everybody the modified proffers that we sent? Remember we?
Yes, I had those. I sent them out to everyone.
And you sent the black line too?
Let me see, which one do I have? Sorry.
Mine came through as red line, but
Same thing, yeah.
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 Depends on whether you've got a color.
Is it the one with the blue and red that you just sent me?
Yeah,
Yes.
does anybody need an extra copy of those? But they will.
I'll take a
Yeah.
copy. I've got one at the
And I'd
house.
love to have another one that's better printed.
Pass it around to Will. Will, passing this down to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else need one? 'Cause So what we tried to do, and I don't want to get us off of the sound, but we tried to take into consideration some things that y'all had brought forward last time and incorporate them. And then there's some others that I think we can incorporate, but I don't want to get us off the sound, but, you know, like having the historic marker, you know, maintaining the green, making it open, you know, the other things that were in there that we didn't put in here because we were trying to focus on the main ones, but you can get that. But anyway, that's sort of what we're at a point where we'd really like to hopefully reach an agreement, and we use the format of the proffers because that's what we've got to get to the city. And so that's why we modify that and continue that process. And so that's the approach. There was a difference the last time and from information and there were some issues that, remember you put together a list and you met with Crocker and, you know, that list, there's some things on there we can talk about too, that we can add in that are not in these that we think will, you know, be consistent with what you want. But the sound, I just don't see us being in a position where we can go to the city and say, we want to be subject to a different decibel type system for equipment that nobody in the city has, and so forth. But on the other hand, we are willing to do these type of restraints as to where the sound is directed. And you remember we have it in the proffers that there will be a standard that Venture Richmond or anybody who's running it has to pull the plug on certain things, you know, there's a phone number to call and that type of thing under the event management plan. I do believe the event management plan is a major benefit to everybody. That where we say, this is what we're going to be doing, this is what we think we need. In the draft of the proffers, it basically says we will send that to the police department and we will send it to y'all simultaneously to whoever's address is on the records. That gives you the benefit of seeing what's being proposed and commenting to the police department, and the police department is the ultimate conclusion, the decision maker. And so that's the thrust. I think the event management plan is a game changer in the sense that it's not just we doing what we think and y'all complaining. It's trying to set a system up from the onset where everybody knows, and if you have dissent with it, then the police decide, you know, what should be done. The other thing, I keep getting off the sound, but the other thing, I really think that the signage. I told Jennifer that we're willing to pay for the signage you want now, and have the city put it up now, because the pictures from this past River Rock did illustrate the problem. you've been saying. So I think it is better to do that sooner than later, but there may be some uncertainty within the group as to what you want to do, so. But we wanted to do that now for any future events.
Can you address the bass, please? That's not anywhere here.
Well, it is part of the sound, and so it's not spelled out as the bass, but it is part of that.
But that's the objectionable part, and that's what's not addressed in the city ordinance.
It's not addressed in your study. Your study doesn't evaluate or make any kind of recommendations about lowering the sound rate, the base rate.
What would you suggest would be the appropriate resolution of that?
We could use Z weighting, which the police do have, or C weighting, which almost everybody has.
Z, as in the letter Z?
Yeah, that's
Zero.
what the police sound meters can do Z. So they can evaluate bass at its actual level, at its energy level. I can do it at C. Almost everybody can download an application to their smartphone, and it's good enough to go to court with.
Would be good enough to do what I'm saying?
Go to court with.
And what does the C measure?
Bass.
The C is a complicated set of sound curves, and it picks up more bass and more of the very high frequency noise, like sirens and whistles. It's also better for impact noise, like a hammer striking something. And the A doesn't do that. It averages sound over time, and C does a better job of capturing impulses.
So A is average, is that the reason for they call it A, or did you?
A was designed
More
to
within
protect
the
people's
range of
hearing.
what humans hear.
Okay. I'm sorry.
It was designed to protect hearing.
And the C is measured only at the area where it's, the sound originated, or is it measured somewhere else?
It could be either one. It's just a setting on a regular sound meter.
And it's called DBC.
Bill, the issue that we're having with the city's sound ordinance is that every single person I have talked to in the city always seems to say it's not enforceable, which is why we were working towards trying to set up a standard, which is why we invited Don to come up with a standard that was enforceable, that we could all live with.
If it's in the proffers, it would be enforceable, I
Exactly.
think. That's the premise, I think, is what you're saying. The question being where you may measure it, You could measure it at the source of the sound, you could measure it on 2nd Street, you could measure it where the homes are. I think they're your options, they're probably anywhere in between, but
Well, we had suggested 2nd Street, but I'm getting the objection that you're just objecting to, are you objecting to our location where we wanted to measure the sound? Or are you just objecting to measuring the sound?
no, not objection to measuring the sound, I don't think, but it's the location.
What location would you prefer?
How about the top of the hill, right above the overlook apartments? That would work. The top of the hill.
Well, I'm
next
asking
to the-
Bill what location they actually prefer.
Well, somewhere in the short pump, no. I figured if you're kidding, right?
We're just not gonna be willing to agree to a sound limit that causes us to not be able to produce the concert. If every event that we have produced would violate your proposed sound limit, then we would not be able to produce those events. And we're not going to turn the sound down to the point that the audience can't hear it or that the audience has an inferior experience. So we've wanted to limit impacts here by limiting the number of days and adhering to the existing rules. But to create an arbitrary sound limit that is so low that we know we can't meet it because it's being measured so close to the speaker or because the number is so low, if we know we can't meet it for any of the things that we do, and then we agree to it, we can't produce any of the events that we've been producing.
But do you,
And I think that the events that we've been producing have had a very minimal sound impact on the neighborhood if you take out Skrillex.
no,
That's not what they're reporting.
Well, what you mentioned measuring at the top of the hill, where is that in relationship to Overlook and the Oregon Hill?
Right outside the Overlook condos, I guess there's a square, and on the point, on that hill.
Is that
So like in front of my place?
yeah,
So it would be on the west side of Belvedere.
Mhm.
There's a berm between Belvedere and where I live. And that's probably the highest spot
Yep.
in terms of just.
So what number would you like for us to use, Jack?
Let's get the location first, I think, because that's the key. Is that the same area that the sound study that you had done was?
I think it was near
No.
behind the wall.
it's not behind the wall, it was where that, some sort of little statue is. Piece of
There's a
artwork.
new house that was built, and it's right next to that new house.
That's where the sound was taken.
It was specifically directly in a straight line with the stage.
The house was built after he took his
Okay,
measurements.
to make sure that it wasn't obstructed by anything, including a wall.
And how about that house, which now sort of becomes place that was measured, where is that as to your place?
It's on, you've got Belvedere right here with the War Memorial, and Holly Street is here. And this house is on the corner of Belvedere and Holly Street, right there in it looks like it's in the park.
Yeah,
And
it
the
does.
statue is right next door, next to it.
So it's the same, in essence, the same place? that
Yeah, it's a
the
little
study was
farther
done?
away probably than I am.
But we can't use that spot because of the new house.
Yeah, the place that you referenced, I'm trying to find this, is that the same, that's not the same place as this, but is it in concept the same area?
Yeah, it's on the same, there's a little ridge that runs parallel to Belvedere.
It's just west of Belvedere,
Yeah.
and it's a little closer to the river than the spot that y'all had measured from before. It's pretty much right in front of Lynn's house. He lives right around the corner from the gazebo.
Okay.
He's facing Belvedere.
There's nobody in this room that understands sound well enough to know what the number should be and how it should be measured.
Well, I see
Because
a
Polly
contradiction.
has a very low tolerance for bass.
No, the host does too.
And the concert goers want bass.
The contradiction I see is you're saying that your sound study showed that there was not any impact to the neighborhood. At the same time, you're saying if we put a sound limit, you can perform. I mean, you're saying that it has a trivial effect on the neighborhood, the sound, and yet you're not willing to codify that sound decibel limit because you're saying you're going to exceed it. I mean, it doesn't make sense, Jack. You're saying,
Let me jump in here, Bill. We're here because we're committed to finding a standard that is workable and reasonable. And we've invited the police here because presumably they'd be the ones necessary to enforce it. So maybe we can hear from the city police as to, one, the enforceability of the current ordinance, because that's one of our concerns. I mean, normally our fail-safe would be treat us the same as everybody else in the city, please. Okay. The problem with the noise ordinance is we feel like if you just simply say, we'll follow the noise ordinance is unenforceable, then that doesn't really help us a lot. It also, I don't think, takes into account some of the more modern sound measuring techniques that our sound expert has talked about. But whatever is actually enforceable and workable and reasonably protects the neighborhood, we'd be happy with. And so, if the police were to say, hey, plainly discernible inside Polly's living room is the standard, then let's adopt it. Okay, or if they were to say, hey, police have used different standards, local governments use different standards. We just went with a decibel level because it was one, the same type of measurements that were being done in the city ordinance, which, while the ordinance itself is unenforceable because of all sorts of different issues, Presumably, if you put a standard that was measurable in the proffers, like you said, at least it'd be enforceable as a zoning matter, if nothing else. So I guess I'd like to hear from the police as to the enforceability of the ordinance and what standards they might suggest.
Well, Will has been doing this, I asked you, for about 5 years. I came into this a little under 3 years ago. My former boss, Mike Snodder, was very involved with the sound ordinance. The first thing we said was, we were asked to do that. What would we suggest? How do we want to do it? And my boss and I took a stance. We don't want to really get too much involved in making recommendations on a law that should be imposed. We personally felt that it just wasn't our branch of government. It wasn't what we were going to do. Now, we would certainly sit on a board and have recommendations about the enforceability and whatnot, but we weren't going to run a particular ordinance, if you will, or modifications up our chain of command to the mayor or city council. So we're very cautious in our wording on what we wanted to propose. I will say, though, that the last time the revisions to the ordinance that the committee that you were on made was sent up to Mike Snodder and to the former chief, Ray Tarasovic. And that was more enforceable for us than the current sound ordinance. The current sound ordinance is difficult. It's very difficult to work with. So the revisions that committee made, Ray Tarasovic and Mike Snodder, were supportive of it. What they were not going to do was, introduce it to the mayor or city council, that we were going to leave that up to that branch of government, if you will. Sure.
Okay, so that was a standard that was found desirous by the police, but it didn't.
When you say desirous, I will say it's
Preferable.
It was more enforceable.
It's more
More
enforceable.
enforceable,
It would
that's good.
allow us an easier way to enforce a noise ordinance.
And that would be applicable to everybody in the city.
Yes,
Okay.
not just this one issue.
Yeah.
One of the biggest heartburns I have is when we start talking about, away from residential zones, but in the downtown area, having to go inside and measure 4 feet away from a wall, having to have a complainant that will allow me to come in, it became very cumbersome.
And
So
what,
there were,
they just never went forward with it, the administration?
our administration,
No, I mean not the police department, but why wasn't it approved?
We approached several city council members and they wouldn't sponsor it. Each of them
I think
thinks
there was
it's
some weariness
political.
from the last fight over the sound ordinance,
Yeah, it's-
perhaps.
It's a tough fight and it's related to several other fights.
So if there was a call complaining about excessive sound today in Oregon Hill, perhaps in concert with some event being held, what would happen? If they called the non-emergency line for the police department, what would occur?
based on, let's say, River Rock going on,
Sure.
the honest answer is not all of our guys are certified with these noise meters, but let's say I came out there or one of my guys came out there, we could take a reading from adjacent to a complainant's home or something. It's got to reach a certain decibel level prior to 11 p.m., after 11 p.m. And I gather, I don't think that the festival would have reached those points with the current noise ordinance.
So to challenge, or the reason that some of the enforceability presents problems for the department would be when you don't have a complainant who will agree to allow you into a...
That's in a separate area.
Is it?
That's in a separate area.
What would you categorize as some of the more, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you, but the more challenging aspects of the current ordinance?
That is the most challenging, although it doesn't apply here, that is the most challenging. When we deal with a lot of, the Miller and Rhodes building, a lot of stuff downtown, mixed-use structures, if you will. The implementation of having to go into somebody's residence to take a reading is very difficult.
Even if we let you in,
Well, this isn't,
I can
Yes.
think and wave.
yes, but 9 people out of 10 that call, they just call and complain about noise.
They don't wanna upset the neighbors.
Oh.
Well, and you've got to let me in at 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that, and
Well, I can assure you I would still be up then.
well, you're calling us, so I understand that, and there's a lot of, the vast majority of the public isn't aware of that. All they know is to pick up the phone and call the police
Yeah,
department and complain about the noise, so they're very unaware of that.
Now, so did the administration offer this, I'm talking about the mayor, I mean, they can offer resolutions, I think, but they did not choose to do that.
The mayor's the reason why the sound ordinance is the way it is. David Hicks took over the the writing of the sound ordinance, and he raised it up 10 decibels so that we can't enforce it. So the mayor is on the side of the nightclubs and the entertainment establishment.
Okay. Now, under that standard, I thank you for getting him here and speak. Where is that, that would be measured at the place of the complainant?
Yes.
Okay. And how does that, and so let's, just for sake of, if the complainant calls and the measure is at this place at Lynn House, right across that area, then how is that standard different from what's on the sound ordinance?
I don't understand your.
Okay, thank you. Let's assume this ordinance change that had been recommended by the police department were in fact the ordinance today, or if we put in these proffers, how would that differ from a practical standpoint if measured at the location that was agreed upon?
They can stand outside your property and take it right there, and we've included C or Z in order to evaluate bass. It's a high level. It's about 10 decibels higher than our DBA standards, but that's what we recommended. Also, our current noise ordinance says 11 daytime goes up to 10:59 p.m. and we want it to be lower than that.
To what time?
11 p.m. is night and 10:59 p.m. is day.
Okay, but your recommendation is at what time would the measurement? I'm saying if there were a standard, they were in the proffers, there was an agreed place to where to measure, what would the standard, what would be the time that would be measured?
We want to drop it down to 9 p.m.
But I thought the sound, we've been talking about 10 p.m. and 11 p.m.
I think that's the sounds, the
I'm-
committee he was on.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think
This is
that's
for
the
all
standard
purposes,
they
not
were
just for
using.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
What we gave you is what we had agreed on.
10.
Yeah, that's something completely separate.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Okay.
Think about another thing too. There was a family that lived here, they've moved, but he was a surgeon and on call. And they would have to get up and go across town to a hotel somewhere just so he could get the sleep he needed. And when you have babies, they can't sleep. They can't get afternoon naps. So then they're little horrors later.
Yeah.
And they can't go to bed at night.
Just for reference, I know we were talking about the positioning of the speakers. Were you referring to the last folk festival when you were discussing about positioning the speakers and not getting any complaints? Or was this Dominion River Rock? You just said last festival, so.
Well, this is what we're proposing.
Yeah. Well, when you were describing it, you also explained that you had done this and it reduced the number of complaints.
I don't know whether that was done or not, Jack.
Yeah, it was done for the last Folk Festival.
Last folk festival, okay.
That's the last time we
I was
used
just going to say with Dominion River Rock, if I understand correctly, and Len and Polly can correct me, apparently the sound and the overlook was reduced. But then I had Brian Green, who lives on like the 400 block of Pine Street, complaining about the noise down there being excessive. So I don't know if y'all were trying to position the speakers or not, but I was just throwing that out there.
It's actually easier to do at Tredegar Green because of the hillside. And that's what we're talking about is Tredegar Green. That's the zoning case. So we think that we've demonstrated that directing the array of speakers into the hillside was effective at the last Folk Festival in reducing sound levels to the point that the sound engineer called them trivial to Oregon Hill because the decibel levels were very close to background noise where he measured them. So we think that we were effective at the last Folk Festival at Tredegar Green by directing the speakers into the hillside. So that's why we think it works.
Len, Polly, I usually leave town.
Yeah,
So-
I was not here
Okay.
last Folk Festival.